What a move by Howie Roseman! Whoa! Yo, everybody, how you doing? So let me take this second to welcome all of you watching, and to specifically the stinking Dallas cockroach fans. I just want to remind you that this year the Dallas Cowboys are going to stink. Last year you were lucky. Last year you got a break. But this year you're going to stink. So as long as you know that, we're ready to go on with the show. Now, we're only a few days from training camp. We're only a few days. Some teams actually have their rookies showing up today. They're reporting today. It's time for football. It's time for bucket hats and preseason. You ready? I'm ready. You ready? I'm ready. Let's get this going. Now, yesterday, we talked about the Eagles' offense. We talked about best case scenario, the expectations, and the ceiling of that offense and players on it. It was pretty exciting to realize how good they can be if everything goes right and they live up to their potential. Now today I want to talk about the defense. I want to talk about the defense expectations and ceiling for some of the players and my feelings of how it would turn out in a best case scenario. So when I think of the Eagles defense, I think of one guy comes to mind first. The guy in the middle, Jordan Hicks. To me, Jordan Hicks is the most important player on the Eagles besides Carson Wentz. Now, we Eagle fans, we know how good Hicks is. We know it. But the rest of the league doesn't. But after this year, they're going to know. Because I think he's going to go out and he's going to have about 120 to 130 tackles, maybe 100 solo tackles, and about 5 to 6 interceptions. I think he will be Defensive Player of the Year or a candidate finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. But I think that's his ceiling, and that's where he will be when it is all said and done. He is, to me, the foundation for building around. You build around him if you want a great defense. Now, with the Eagles having cornerback holes in their defense last year and this year, one of the ways to stop that and to help it is to have a great pass rush. Jim Schultz does not like to blitz. He does not like to blitz, and he's probably not going to blitz that much this year. So those defensive line players are the most important thing for those secondary guys, because they get to the quarterback. If they can get home, they can help out that secondary. Now, last year we had Brandon Graham, who was considered the best defensive lineman the Eagles had. Many people have him rated as a top 5 guy, a Pro Bowl type defensive end, but he only had 5.5 sacks. Now, in a best case scenario, and my expectations with him having had his best year and being a first round pick, I expect Brandon Graham to get at least double-digit sacks. I expect 10 sacks from Brandon Graham. The Eagles had 34 sacks total last year. That's not a lot. I believe they can get it up to about 45 sacks this year. So Brandon Graham will have double-digit sacks. Then you have Fletcher Cox and Timmy Jernigan. To me, Timmy Jernigan is an upgrade over Benny Logan. I think he's a better pass rusher than Benny Logan, and I think that he could get 5 or 6 sacks himself. I see Fletcher Cox with about 8. Then we go over to the other end. Now, if you have Brandon Graham getting 10 sacks, you have 8 from Fletcher Cox and 6 from Timmy Jernigan, then those guys over there have potential to really make this defensive line good. Now, I see it as a group effort on the other side. I think Vinny Curry, who says he was hurt, comes back and he can get 7 or 8 sacks. I think it's reasonable to assume he should get it for what he gets paid. So if Vinny Curry can get, let's say, 7 or 8 sacks, then I see Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett, I expect to some point start on the other side of Graham this year. I think he'll win the job at some point, and as a rookie, I think it's reasonable that he gets 6 or 7 sacks himself. Now, the one guy that I want to talk about that nobody else really talks about is my preseason sleeper, Steven Means. I think he's going to be a sleeper in preseason. I think he's going to be a factor this year for the Eagles. So I think he will be 5 or 6 sacks. Now, when these guys are all getting the sacks and you're getting about 45 sacks against the quarterback, you know what that does for your cornerbacks and your secondary? It does a lot. It does a lot. I think Malcolm Jenkins will control the secondary. He will be a leader and a mentor for those young corners like Russell Douglas and Jalen Mills. And if those corners and that secondary, if those corners can just not lose you games, can just keep you in the game and not blow games for you, this team with that kind of production from the line and Jordan Hicks is going to win the division and go to the playoffs. That's what could happen in a best case scenario. That's the best case scenario and ceiling for this defense, and I think it's reasonable. I think it's very reasonable. Jalen Mills can improve in the second year, and I expect Russell Douglas to win the starting job at some point, struggle early, and then start to play well as the season goes on. So if we get this kind of production from these guys on defense, we are looking at the division champions of 2017. Take care, talk to you later, and don't be a dink.